Killing in the Name. When Rage Against the Machine released Killing in the Name in 1992, nobody was ready for the kind of uproar and anger it caused. This song went beyond just being a loud rock song with guitars and shouting. It was a full-on explosion of rage aimed straight at the systems of power. The lyrics, especially the repeated and shouted cuss words at the authorities, were very unexpected. The band was furious about police brutality, racism, and government control, and this track didn't just hint at those themes. It basically screamed them in your face. It was raw, repetitive, and impossible to ignore. Radio stations didn't know what to do with it. Some banned it entirely, while others played a censored version that reduced the heat of the song, but the anger was still there. The backlash only made the song more powerful. Even though many stations wanted nothing to do with it, fans loved it. People were constantly chanting it at protests and rallies. It resonated with them because the song tapped into something deep in the early 90s. Frustration that authority leaders weren't listening, and that certain communities, especially black and working class ones, were victims of inequality. This is why Rage Against the Machine was admired by the public, and people who felt voiceless finally felt seen. The music video was banned in some countries too, especially for showing real protest footage and police violence. But again, that just made it more powerful. It became underground gold, passed around, and played in skate parks, basements, and college dorms with the volume up. The most incredible part was that Killing in the Name never stopped being relevant. In 2009, 17 years after it was released, British fans launched a campaign to get it to #1 on the Christmas charts as a protest against the commercialized winners of talent shows like The X Factor. They succeeded. It beat out all the polished pop stars and went straight to the top, uncensored, during the holiday season. That moment said everything. This song was unstoppable. Whenever people felt like they were being controlled, silenced, or pushed around, Killing in the Name was their go-to weapon. God Save the Queen. In 1977, the Sex Pistols released God Save the Queen, and it felt like they had set the entire United Kingdom on fire on purpose. It wasn't just the title that shocked people, it was the timing. Queen Elizabeth II's Silver Jubilee was in full swing, and the mood of the entire country was national pride. People were waving flags, organizing street parties, and praising the monarchy like it was sacred. That was when the Sex Pistols dropped this rebellious punk anthem that called the monarchy a fascist regime and said the Queen ain't no human being. There was nothing subtle about the track. It was brutal, loud, and unapologetic. The BBC and pretty much every major media outlet freaked out. The song was immediately banned from being played on national radio. Major retailers refused to stock it. Even chart officials allegedly manipulated rankings to keep it from hitting #1, despite its record-breaking sales. While the government was treating it like a national threat, punk fans loved it. The censorship the government placed on it backfired. God Save the Queen became even more iconic because it was banned. To really stick it to the establishment, the Sex Pistols even rented a boat and tried to perform God Save the Queen live on the River Thames as the official Jubilee flotilla passed by. Police swarmed the dock when they came ashore and shut the whole thing down, but by then, the damage, or what the Sex Pistols called the revolution, was already done. They had thrown punk rock straight into British tradition, and even though the song was banned, its message got louder with every attempt to silence it. Relax. When Relax, by Frankie. Goes to Hollywood hit the airwaves in 1983, it sounded like a regular synth-pop banger at first. It was catchy and so full of energy that you'd probably think it was just another dance track, but then people started paying closer attention to the lyrics, and suddenly, it wasn't just a song anymore. It was a straight-up scandal. The line, "Relax, don't do it, when you want to come," made jaws drop. At a time when intercourse expression was still a taboo topic on mainstream radio, this song felt like it was pushing every boundary. The music video didn't help either. It was a wild, neon-lit fantasy set in a same-gender nightclub, full of leather, dominance, and just enough chaos to give TV executives a heart attack. As you'd expect, the BBC lost its mind. A famous radio host, DJ Mike Reed, reportedly pulled the record live on air, saying it was obscene. After that, the BBC banned it completely. It received a no more radio play and no more music video ban on top of the pops. The BBC thought that would reduce the track's appeal and make it less known until it faded from the music scene, but instead, it did the exact opposite. The song went straight to #1 and stayed there for 5 weeks. Suddenly, Relax was a badge of rebellion. Teenagers were buying it just to see what the fuss was about, and club DJs couldn't spin it fast enough. Even the band itself became part of the song's legend. Everyone wanted to hear the record that was too dirty for the BBC. It was like forbidden fruit, and the public couldn't get enough. What makes Relax so legendary isn't just the controversy. It's also how it started a conversation about freedom, expression, and censorship. Frankie Goes to Hollywood didn't back down. They leaned into the drama, and their fans stood right there with them. In fact, the band actually made them one of the biggest bands in the UK overnight. And even now, decades later, the track is still thriving unapologetically, changing pop music history while it's at it. Brown Sugar. Brown Sugar was released in 1971, and it was an instant hit. The Rolling Stones were already known for stirring the pot, but this song turned heads for all the wrong. And, at the time, right, reasons. You see, it had a great guitar riff, wonderful vocals, and that wild energy only Mick Jagger could pull off. But underneath the catchy beat, the lyrics were shocking. It talked about slavery, sexual violence, and race too casually for how serious those topics are. At the time, a lot of people just sang along without really thinking. But looking back now, it's hard not to cringe. The opening line alone references a young enslaved girl in New Orleans, and it only gets more uncomfortable from there. Radio stations really didn't know what to do with it. Some banned it outright, while others turned a blind eye because the song was just so popular, and they wanted people to tune in to their stations to listen to the song. It topped charts around the world, but the controversy was always under the surface. Although the lyrics made people uneasy, the way they were delivered was like it was all just one big, edgy joke. Over the years, critics and fans started reevaluating it. What was once seen as rebellious and provocative started to feel problematic and tone-deaf. Even Mick Jagger himself later admitted he probably wouldn't write those lyrics today. He said he was young and trying to shock people, but that times had changed, and so had he. The most interesting part of the Brown Sugar story is how it shows the cultural shift in how we talk about art and accountability. The song was never officially canceled, but the Stones eventually stopped playing it live, not because of pressure necessarily, but because even they could feel the discomfort it now brought with it. It also shows how society moves forward, questioning the things we used to let slide. Sure, Brown Sugar still has a place in music history, but now it's viewed through a more critical lens, proving that even legendary hits aren't immune to the test of time. Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. In 1967, Lucy in the Sky with Diamond was released, and it sounded like a dream. Listening to it, you could imagine being in a colorful and surreal garden. The vibe it gave was totally unlike anything else on the radio. The Beatles were in their psychedelic phase, and this track in their Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band album felt like a magic trip through someone's imagination. But it didn't take long before fans and critics started connecting the dots in the title. L in the word Lucy, S in the word sky, and D in the word diamonds summed up to LSD, the same drug that was trending in the counterculture scene at the time. Immediately, people figured this out. The song stopped being whimsical. It was controversial. People started saying the Beatles had hidden a drug reference in plain sight, and the BBC didn't find it funny. They banned the song from being played on British radio, even though the Beatles denied any drug connection. John Lennon always insisted it was inspired by a drawing his young son Julian made at school of his friend Lucy flying in the sky surrounded by diamonds. Lennon said the trippy imagery was more about Alice in Wonderland than acid. Unfortunately, the timing didn't help. 1967 was the peak hippie era, and psychedelics were everywhere. To add to this, Lucy in the Sky had all the swirling melodies and kaleidoscopic lyrics that practically begged to be interpreted as drug-related. Whether it was intentional or not, the public had made up its mind. What makes the Lucy story so wild is how it seems to combine innocence with rebellion. The Beatles stopped being seen as mop-haired heartthrobs. They were perceived as fearless. Even now, the debate over what the song really meant still exists, and it never even needed to say the word drug to stir up so much controversy. Imagine. It's kind of wild to think that Imagine, a song basically begging for peace, love, and unity in the world, was once considered too controversial to play. When John Lennon released it in 1971, he wasn't trying to start a riot. He was simply imagining a better world with no borders, religion, greed, or war. He only wanted people to live together without the things that usually divide us. For decades, that message made the song iconic. It became the ultimate peace anthem, played at rallies, vigils, and even Olympic ceremonies. But fast forward to 2001, after the September 11th attacks, suddenly Imagine wasn't welcome in American radio stations. In the weeks after the tragedy, the country was still reeling from the tragedy. Patriotism was sky high, and there was a lot of fear, anger, panic, and confusion, so radio stations tried to avoid anything that might upset listeners. One major media company even released a list of lyrically questionable songs, and Imagine was on it. Why? Because of lines like, "Imagine there's no countries," and "Imagine there's no religion." Some people thought those lyrics were unpatriotic, or even disrespectful, at a time when Americans were clinging to national identity and faith. So, the same song that once inspired hope was now seen as too risky and too radical. This change hurt fans who believed the song was more important than ever. Lennon's lyrics certainly hadn't changed. The world around them had. The song eventually made its way back into the public's good graces, but the fact that it was ever silenced just proves how deeply music can affect people, even when it's calm instead of shouting. My Generation. When My Generation dropped in 1965, it wasn't like other rock songs. It was a war cry. The Who weren't trying to be polite on the track. They were loud, messy, and unapologetic, and nothing captured that rebellious energy more than Roger Daltrey's stuttering delivery of the line. It sounded very raw, like he could barely keep up with the anger boiling in his chest, but not everyone saw it that way. Some people, especially radio executives, thought the stuttering in the lyrics was mocking people with speech disabilities. In a time when social sensitivity wasn't really part of the music conversation, this misunderstanding caused major backlash. The BBC, always quick to jump on anything remotely controversial, banned the song from airplay. That move was intended to ruin My Generation before it had a chance to succeed, but instead, the opposite happened. The controversy made the song hotter. Young people, already feeling like they didn't have a voice, rallied around it. The stuttering, intentional or not, was used to express frustration of feeling silenced or dismissed. What's wild is that the very thing that almost got it banned ended up being what made it legendary. That stutter didn't end up holding the song back. It actually pushed it forward, right to the top of rock history. My Generation became the anthem for every kid who felt like they didn't belong. Today, it's hard to imagine rock without that track paving the way, and it's a perfect example of how music that upsets some people can actually rewrite the rules, even if it stutters doing it. Lola. Lola by the Kinks is one of those songs that grows on you without you even realizing it. It starts off like a catchy love story, where a boy meets a girl, they dance and sparks fly, then the twist happens. The lyrics drop a surprise that Lola might not be who she seems, hinting at gender bending. Despite the track's playful take on gender identity in 1970, that's definitely not what got the song in trouble. The big problem was the line, "You drink champagne and it tastes just like Coca-Cola." The BBC immediately disapproved. They didn't care about the track's gender bending. They were focused on the product placement. Back then, BBC rules were strict about commercial references in music. If a song mentioned a brand name, especially a company as famous as Coca-Cola, it risked being banned from airplay, and that's exactly what happened. Lola was pulled until the Kinks went back and re-recorded the line. They swapped Coca-Cola for Cherry Cola, just to satisfy the censors. That twist makes the whole situation look like a comedy. What's even funnier is how this move gave Lola even more attention. People wanted to hear what was so dangerous about a pop song that merely mentions a drink in one of its lyrics. In the process, Lola became one of the Kinks' biggest hits. The controversy became the talk of the music industry and beyond. Although the gender twist made the track unforgettable, the Coca-Cola ban made it iconic. And it's a great example of how censorship can sometimes miss the point entirely and accidentally turn a song into a classic.